Welcome, everybody, to Victory Circle Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Wilson. Today, we have Arlene Washburn of AV Connections. Welcome, Arlene.
I'm so happy to be here, Jason. Finally, we get to see each other's faces.
I know it. It's been so long since we talked. Thank you so much for being on the show.
It's my pleasure.
To start, I love to get into everybody's career paths. Tell us, what was your dream when you were a child? What did you want to be when you grew up?
Ooh, that is a deep question. I had so many. Well, first of all, I was a tomboy. So anything that boys did, I wanted to do. I wanted to be a truck driver. I wanted to be a cop. Anything that boys did. I got into sports. I played basketball. And then as time progressed, I realized that my calling was giving people advice, so to speak. Like everyone would come to me. I was the go-to person to figure out just about anything because I'm one of those problem solver type people.
Okay.
Nothing definitive.
Okay, so at what age did this start?
Oh my gosh, probably around 8. Because
Wow.
I was a little woman. I was very grown up because I'm first generation American. So growing up, I had to start translating for my mom. My parents are immigrated to the US. And so you kind of grow up very quickly when you have parents who don't speak the native language.
Right. And you're originally from Dominican Republic, right?
I was born and raised here, but my parents are both Dominican. Yes.
Okay. And what did you like to do when you were in school? Did you play any sports?
Oh yeah. I was basketball player and captain of my team. And I always got put into these leadership positions for whatever reason, maybe because I'm bossy. I don't know.
Okay. And when you graduated from school, what was your plan?
Well, originally coming from a single parent household, I just wanted to work and make money to help my mother. So after high school, I got into cosmetology and I sort of went that route for a while there and decided after becoming a little bit more of a germaphobe, I was like, I don't really want to touch people. You have to do that. So, that was my first career and I was always an entrepreneur. So instead of just working at a salon, I had a kit and I used to go around and do hair for women who were running factories and stuff like that they owned and they didn't have the time to go. So they would pay a premium for me to come to them.
Oh,
So I did
wow.
that. I worked as a makeup artist and then eventually got out of that and went back to school and got a degree in technology of all things.
That's interesting. So what subjects did you like in school?
I loved English. I love to, dissect a sentence. It was very strange. Till this day, I remember I went to Catholic school and my sister Delamore, she was this tiny little woman. She must have been like 4 feet tall. And she ingrained the auxiliary verbs into my brain. And I'm like almost 56 and I still remember all these verbs: am, are, is, was, were, be, being, been, have, has, had, was, should, could, may, might, will. It's crazy and it doesn't go away.
Right.
So when I went back to school to get the degree in IT, I was actually already working in the pharmaceutical industry. I was fortunate enough to, degrees were never a barrier for me to get into anything. So I was able to get into that industry, which was really tough because most people had very advanced degrees. And so by the time I graduated, I was already a vice president of the company, of operations, vice president of operations. So I never really did anything with that other than I love technology till this day. And I stay up on everything, but I pretty much stayed the route of the pharma industry and I was in it for 20 years.
Hmm.
Yeah, it was a
Wow.
long time.
Yeah, that is. Okay. So then how did you make the transition from technology to matchmaking?
Well, I actually saw a show on TV, which a lot of people have seen around the world. It was very popular, The Millionaire Matchmaker. And at one point, after having been married for 17 years, I got divorced. And I actually went to a matchmaker because I was so busy working long hours. I had a team. I was very, responsible for a big team and all this. And I'm like, let me try this thing out.
Hmm.
And when I did, I was very disappointed in the quality of the whole it was very transactional, but it was just a poor quality of how everything was being done. And as an operations person, I have a knack for helping, like I've always done consulting for others and stuff like that. And I'm like, okay, this could be done way better.
Hmm.
And so my last position when I was a senior director and I actually was laid off, I thought this is a perfect time. Like if I don't do it now, it's hard to leave your career and start something new. But when the universe provides and says, you can step down now, which was a huge relief for me at the time. I was like, I'm just going to try it. And I did. I started my business and I did really, really well. And I
Wow.
just based on my own ideas and things like that. Now, I have to say that I had already taken a psychology course. I had been doing that and having had a failed, quote unquote, failed marriage. I was already embarking in the whole, you know, self-help and taking courses and things and learning about relationships, the things that people never teach you about, including your parents.
Okay, that's interesting. So when you went to the matchmaker, where were you located at the time?
I was living in New Jersey and I went to a matchmaking company that was super high end in New York on Park Avenue. And
Wow.
but basically all they wanted to know or was just to take a look at you, make sure you were a size 4, which I
Huh.
think I was a size 2 or a size 4. And, you know, intelligent enough and articulate enough because a lot of their clients were high end or wealthy men, which I didn't know anything really about it other than I found it online. It was not too far. But just the whole process was just off for me, in terms of, because even though I wasn't a paying customer, because in this case they only worked with men, I've always believed that if you're working in the commodity is humans, right? People, then you have to treat all of them like they're your customers, and
Right.
I felt like that wasn't the treatment for the women.
Okay. So with your current agency, do you cater more towards women or men, or is it both?
Actually, both. So what I did was, when I started my business, I did that for a while and then had an opportunity to learn about a school that was the only state licensed school for matchmaking in the country. And I believe it still is. And I went and got certified, which was great validation for me. And after several years of affiliating with the school, they would always invite me to teach some of the classes. Their CEO stepped down. And so they asked me if I would take that position. So I sort of took a sabbatical from my business and became the CEO of the school. And I did that for a few years and then I stepped down and now I'm back to my own business. So to answer your question, the thing that I realized over the years as a matchmaker is that most people really need coaching,
Hmm.
right? Because even if you're going to provide matchmaking services, it's really important to get them relationship ready, which is a process I took myself through. And it's a process that I help others with. So I think everybody needs this. So I went from only working with men as clients for matchmaking to later just taking on all, you know, everybody, men and women, but deciding, okay, this person would be great for coaching, this one for matchmaking, or this one for both.
While you were going through that whole process with your agency and everything, at what point did you meet your current husband?
I actually met him from that. So I was at that job where they let me go. And I met him just before, like a few months before that. And we hit it off. It's a very fun and interesting story about us, but they even wrote a whole newspaper article about it and did a video, a showcase from our local newspaper. But I met him, and imagine you're dating someone and all of a sudden, they have this career and I was a high level executive to, oh, by the way, I'm starting a matchmaking company. I actually might be selling my house because I don't know. I had a big house and I'm driving a Mercedes Benz and I'm like, I'm just going to give it all up to try this thing. And plus the fact that when you're a matchmaker, you're meeting men all the time. And so you really need a very confident person in your life to be able to handle that. And
Yes.
my husband was like, go for it. I'll help you out. And he's like, you know what? we were dating, I don't know, a few months, like into a year into our relationship. He's like, I said to him, I might have to sell my house because, I'm taking this risk here and I have savings and everything, but I want to minimize my expenses. And a year into our relationship, he's like, well, look, why don't I do this? Why don't I move in and help you out just to kind of be as a backbone of whatever it is that you're doing? And I was like, I was very like, a lot of trepidation about him moving in, but he did. Because giving up, like when I was so independent for a long time and just having someone have a key to my house and things like that, that was just like so new.
Yeah, goodness. Okay, this was after how much time of dating though?
We had been dating for about a year when he moved in.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah.
Well, that's acceptable.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. It was, but it was like a big shift for me. But it was the best decision of my life. He moved in, and then a couple of years after that, we decided we would get married. Because my thought was like, I already have a daughter. We're, why do we need to get married? We're two adults. But he kept saying, well, I really want to, solidify it. And I said to him, well, if we do, remember, it's going to have to be forever.
Yes.
So we say that to each other. We say that in slow motion. We're like, forever.
Well, that's great. So, was it love at first sight, or how did the whole thing happen?
Very interesting. So we met on on Match.com, free commercial for Match, and he did not have a photo, and he kept sending me these little messages, but they were very funny because he's very funny. So I would read them and delete, read, delete, read, delete. Finally, the fourth message, I responded and said, you must be hideous looking, because if you were as cute and as funny as your photos, as your messages, you would have a photo.
Right.
And the next day he had a photo. And so I saw him and I was like, okay, he's cute. Totally my type. And I said, well, why didn't you have a photo? He's like, well, I didn't know how to upload it, so I had my niece do it for me. So my husband's like brutally honest, like he's very, very honest. So we get on a call. He tells me his whole life story in our first conversation. And then he says, I really want to go out with you, but I already made a date for this weekend with someone, and I would feel terrible to let her know that, like to cancel on her. And I was like, oh my God, this guy's ridiculous. Why is he telling me this? He could just say, I'm not available but he's just too honest. So I got off the phone and I thought that was really cute in a way, like he's honest, right? So he went on his date, and then we made a plan for a future date, and we met halfway. So he was not geographically desirable, which is again one of those things that people look for. Oh, I only want to meet someone within a 25-mile radius. Well,
right.
He was over an hour away.
Oh, okay.
So we met halfway, and we just met for coffee, and we hit it off, and we ended up going next door to this place, which I didn't really know well at the time. Turns out it was an Olive Garden. So back in the day when I only went to fancy restaurants, when I came home, my daughter, who was already maybe 20, she's like, so how was your date? And I was like, oh, it was great. It was really, he was a nice guy, this and that. And she's like, where'd you go? And I said, I don't know. We went to this place called the Olive Garden. And she's like, oh, you must really like this guy. But so when he pulled up, we coincidentally parked right next to each other. So I get out kind of a little dressed up, walked out of a Mercedes-Benz, hotsy totsy from an area called Bergen County, New Jersey, which is kind of like a I don't know, hoity-toity area.
Yes.
And he pulls up with from a pickup truck with a plaid shirt, cowboy boots. And I looked at him and I'm like, okay, this is going to be interesting. So yeah, it was a very interesting thing. So we were kind of opposites in terms of where we came from. His background, Caucasian, grew up in milking cows on a farm, and I grew up in the city, very urban, but our core values were totally aligned. And I think that's really where it counts. You have to be very similar in those core values.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what helped the relationship.
Okay. So what kinds of things did you enjoy doing together?
So with him, so like I said, I kind of was fancy, being in pharma and expense account, going to, staying at Four Seasons and all this stuff. I didn't do a lot of earthy things growing up, and I came from an urban area. So meeting this, redneck for all intents and purposes, right? He's like into country music, and he's like, we should go kayaking. And I'm like, kayaking? I can't even swim, urban girl, like, New York, growing up in New York, a lot of people don't learn how to swim, which is terrible because it's an important life skill.
Right.
So he's like, I want to take you kayaking. And I was like, okay, cool, let's do it, and I fell in love with kayaking. He took me skiing. That wasn't so fun, but it was good to do it for the first time. So a lot of first things that we did together. Turns out, and I don't know if I mentioned this before, but I am a science-based dating and relationship coach. So I focus on the science of dating and relationships. And it turns out that there's a study that shows that if you do new things with someone, that you are more likely to fall in love faster.
Is that right?
Yeah, and it's actually something I would prescribe to a couple that's been together for a long time, where you start to get bored. To get rid of boredom in a relationship, you start doing new things together. So my husband and I, every year, we do a couple's bucket list of things that neither one of us has ever done. And that kind of creates more arousal, not in the sexual way, but it could be sexual arousal. It could be new sexual things that you do, but
right.
But just there's something biologically that happens to us when we experience new things. So almost everything I did with him was new. It was like crazy, all this new stuff. And turns out the city girl prefers the country. So now I live out in the country and I love it. When I go to the city, it's just like the energy is so crazy that I just don't enjoy it. We live on 5 acres on the hill, and then on the bottom of the hill in the driveway, there's a river right in front of the house. We get bears and we get all kinds of critters here all the time. And I just love this lifestyle.
Wow.
And he was very nervous about us moving out here because he's like, I don't know if she's going to be happy, but I absolutely would not change it for the world.
Oh, that's awesome. So you have nothing else around?
No, I have no neighbors because we own so our property is 5 acres, but it's to the right of our house. So the entire block is our property. And then across is the river. And then beyond the river, there's protected land and a farm. So I get to look at this beautiful farm from my window. It's absolutely stunning.
Yeah, I live in the country too, and it's clean air. There's no traffic. Yeah. There's, it's a great place to live.
Yeah. Are you still in Colombia?
Yes.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I love it.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I've been here almost 20 years. Can you believe that?
Wow. So yeah. I assume you're speaking Spanish now.
Now, yes. It took me a good 2.5 years to learn, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My husband wants to learn, but he's just like he wants to say everything in the Americanized way and can't retain words and stuff. Like some people have an area of the brain that is geared and developed for learning languages. Like I can learn a language. If you drop me in any country, I can learn it.
Yeah.
In like no time. But for him, he just doesn't have that part of the brain developed.
So Arlene, concerning your business, what type of clients do you like to work with?
I like to work with people who are coachable, people who have figured out that irrespective of all of their accomplishments, that they need to learn about the tools and the skills and the knowledge of dating and relationships, because we've all been indoctrinated into thinking that it's just something that happens by chance, that you'll figure it out. And that's why so many people are suffering and not having success, even though they're highly accomplished. So if they're open to coaching and learning, those are my ideal clients.
Yes. Have you had any difficult clients along the way?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Difficult in that they think they know what they want, and that's that the criteria that they're using is actually valuable as far as having long-term relationships, when height is not a thing that's going to determine whether or not you have a successful long-term relationship,
Right.
right? So like if you're 5'4" and you must be with someone who's 6 feet tall, then you are just creating a much smaller pool for yourself, especially even in America, there's maybe 14% of the men who are 6 feet or taller. So those are the kind of things that, people waste so much time when they actually want to be in a committed relationship because they have this kind of criteria that is superficial and unimportant.
Yes. With the pandemic, mental health is nothing new, but that pretty much exacerbated the problem.
Yeah.
And now, we can see this with athletes dying at a much younger age and dealing with all kinds of issues like depression and anxiety, suicidal thoughts. Have you incurred any situation like that with a client?
Yeah. I actually believe that mental health is the next epidemic because loneliness in America and around the world had already been killing a lot of people because loneliness causes other issues of health issues, believe it or not. But during that time where people were cooped up like that, it was just crazy. Our phones were ringing off the wall. People
Really?
were, yeah. The use of online dating platforms went up exponentially. And there also were some silver linings like doing initial video calls, slowing down the dating process and not getting physically involved right away, allowing for time to get to know the individual. That was the helpful part. But yeah, it was a really, really crazy time. And I believe that people are still recovering, and there's a lot of mental health issues that are occurring. And I actually had a client who I got married. She was a client. She was um, a psychotherapist who was on TV,
Hmm.
and she wrote a great book on mental health and helping people figure out how to get better from it without also having to take a bunch of drugs that may or may not work. I mean, this is from somebody coming from the pharmaceutical industry.
Hmm.
I know a lot of people who have been on medications and still, you know, taking their lives. So there's a lot that can be done to not exacerbate the mental health issue that exists out there right now.
Yes. So, what do you recommend for people that want to meet people online?
Oh my gosh, there's so many recommendations. I've had the opportunity to speak with the folks at Match.com, so I understand how their algorithm works. And so people first have to understand that the online platforms is not where you're dating. So it's a misnomer of online dating because you're not dating there. You are going to a catalog of singles. And just like in any place, you're going to find great people, and you're also going to find people that are not so great. Uh, in terms of how you present yourself, it's really important to have great images that are recent, that are accurate, and that show your entire body, your face, all of it. Because the last thing you want is to waste time doing the bait and switch where you have old photos of yourself. You want to make sure you create a profile that is forthcoming and storytelling, but not too long, and also not negative in any way because you're showcasing yourself, right? There's marketing involved here. And I think
Right.
people forget that. They get very self-indulgent and all they care about is what they want. And also go negative and say, well, if you're this, I don't want this. And if you're
Hmm.
that, don't come. And so people are perceiving that kind of language in a certain way. So you want to keep your profile as up to date as possible. You want to update it regularly because the algorithm will favor it. You also want to respond to everyone. I know that sounds crazy, but you can send a nice little thanks, but no thanks, good luck with your search kind of message.
Right.
But the more you respond, the more the algorithm will favor you. And then you
Hmm.
also need to be careful not to look at profiles of people that you don't want. So just like in life, the thing that you focus on is what you get more of.
Right.
That's how the algorithm works as well. If you
Oh,
Right? So
is-
if you have all these filters that you've completed, you say, this is what I'm looking for, but you're looking at something else, it'll say, oh, she likes this too. Let's send her more of that. And
mhm.
that's how the universe operates too. If you focus on the negative, this is what I don't want, focus, you get more of that. If you focus on what you do want, you get more of that. And that's how pretty much everything works in my opinion.
That's very true. Yes, absolutely. So
Yeah.
Arlene, this has been an awesome interview. I got to have you back here.
Thank you. I would love that.
Awesome. All right. So how can people find you on social media?
Well, they can find me on all social platforms at Arlene Washburn, and also through my company called AV Connections, AVCONNEXIONS. And yeah, reach out.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Arlene, again for being on our show.
Thank you so much, Jason. I'm so glad we finally met, and I hope we do it again soon.
Absolutely.
Cheers.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye. Thank you for watching Victory Circle Podcast. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel.